We have like 5 minutes of just introduction about gEneSys before we get into the panels, and I also invite Elizabeth. Please, Elizabeth. Yes. Yes. And because we didn't say much about the project at the beginning, and just to I mean, for those of you who doesn't know, I mean, gEneSys is a research project that was funded under Cluster 2 of the Horizon Europe program. So gender and social, economic and cultural empowerment. And at the time when we wrote the proposal, the relationship between this broad topic of inequality and energy was not clear at all. Actually, the call, you remember, Elizabeth, there were no one reference to the word energy. So we actually, together with the consortium, wrote a proposal where the topic was not in the topic. So we answered to a bid where energy was not there. And our thought was basically that, I mean, there is no broader economic and social gender advancement if we don't tackle the process of transformation connected to energy. Then, as Marielle has underlined, the war in Ukraine came in 2023, and I mean, everything was much more clear for the European member state, how critical and strategic is this issue, and how many social gender impact does it bring along. So, I mean, I think gEneSys is one of the first projects funded on this topic on energy, so just to give you a background. And then a couple of key perspectives that has guided our work. I think many of this is also in the presentation of Marielle, so we've been working on the same flow somehow. And I think the need to conceptualize the energy transition not only solely as a technological transformation, I think is key. We cannot design policy, and we don't want any more policy that think about energy transition as a technology-driven process. I mean, I think this must be clear. And I think many of our results that you will listen today and tomorrow show exactly this. The other thing, the second perspective we want to share is that we need a new pedagogy, and I think this was again in your presentation, Marielle. We need to teach in a different way the energy transition at all levels of education. So starting from pupils up to PhD and early career. We need another way of teaching technology connected, and the baseline for the energy transition need to be taught in another way, because as it is today, I mean, it's not inclusive at all. So I think many of our results show this. And then we need, there is a need for the contribution of social science, and I think this is now much more clear today. A few years ago it was not, but I think now, and many of our results say this, when you design an energy policy, you need to include a social component in the design. And then a third perspective that actually includes the African perspective within our project. I leave the floor to Elizabeth on this. Yes.
Right. So I came to this really quite well prepared, because together with some people in this room, we were part of the gEneSys project on gender balance in research and innovation on energy transition. So for that, I read huge amount of stuff. So but when Lucio came and said, you know, this is the call, I thought we really have to do energy in this, because nobody talks about the real issues of energy transition through the gender lens. Yes, they talk about numbers and so on and so on. The same kind of arguments that one had about gender equality in the European Union since the Eaton report in year 2000. So we wanted to be different. And the other thing that was different is to bring, I was working at that time with African Institute of Mathematical Sciences, so we thought, let's bring Africa into this as well. So that was the beginning. And so it's obviously what I have learned is like we're living in the two different worlds, okay? It's the EU and it's the rest of the world, but in particular it's Africa. And everything in Africa is different, including the way people think about inclusion, intersectionality, communities, and so on. So I found that it was really, really interesting to be involved in this. I come from Imperial, which when I was there, it was pretty much men only and technology only. And so in my mind, I keep, now who am I talking to? I'm talking to those guys in the Imperial College. I'm going to persuade them that if they think they're doing excellent research, they are not. If they think they are sort of making impact on society, they are not. It's just in their heads. And I can put the gender lens on them and try to show them that actually they should think in a different way. So I have learned a lot in this project, okay? And I found it incredibly interesting because I've been involved in this stuff since 2001. And I have probably read every argument possible other than the arguments that have been presented in gEneSys. And if you go on Zenodor and read all the deliverables, you will see how different it is. And actually this proposal scored 15 out of 15, and the evaluators were simply so impressed with this approach taken that they thought this was going to be really impactful. And it should be impactful because the results should be of interest not just like generally to policymakers, but the different policymaking audiences. Yes, we're talking to different DGs. We're talking about the AU. We're talking about all those people who decide at this right now about who gets money from Global Gateway. So I think we need to use the results and tailor them to the different policy audiences. Otherwise, they will just get bored, okay? So we just have to do that. But we cannot do this until now because now we have all the deliverables, so it's be much easier to actually identify what to pass. What is worrying me a lot about, because we did some mapping about how research in Africa conceptualizes the values of equity, justice, and fairness. And I discovered that actually that's completely different, okay? It's about human rights. It's about justice. And that's not how we talk about these things in the EU. And I'm slightly worried that maybe if EU has got this impact on financing partnerships with Africa, that these ideas about inclusion, empowerment, consumerism, prosumerism, and so on, these are Western concepts. And we might be accused of colonization of the approaches to energy transition in Africa. And I think that would be completely wrong, yes? And so one has to kind of get the learning out of Africa into the partnerships and say, like, how is it that people decide what should be done? And I came across is it Ubuntu, Gordon? Is it Ubuntu? That's it. That's the way they really, culturally, that is accepted way to make decisions across Africa. And I think we should perhaps use this also, because gEneSys looks at energy transition as an ecosystem, a socio-technical ecosystem with different subsystems, and that can match completely on the Ubuntu approach, yes? And I think that is something that we can add. And the other idea that came to me is that because I was also involved in another project, and I came across a paper on a manifesto for reproducible science. It was written like maybe 15 years ago. And I think maybe one output from our project here, gEneSys project, should be manifesto for just energy transition, that with the examples from the different countries that people understand, yes, and say that's what the just transition means, yes. It is not something that maybe it's in a popular jargon of the EU. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.